This is Kerry with the Vedic Astrology forecast for November of 2022. Here's a summary. The sun represents our collective soul, leaders, government, the heart, and individual agendas. The sun will be in Libra from October 16th through November 16th. The sun remains in Libra through mid-November. Libra is where the action currently is, with the sun forming a trio with Venus and Mercury, in the wake of being partially eclipsed on October 25th. This could make us feel as if we have just crested a mountain that we've been climbing for a while, and we finally see a broader view, allowing us to solve problems with creative solutions. The sun moves to Scorpio, November 16th through December 16th. When the sun moves into Scorpio on November 16th for his standard 1-month-long jaunt, our newfound clarity may gain momentum, which could come in handy as we navigate murky waters that make it difficult to find the bottom. The sun will be bolstered here by aspects from Mars, giving courage, and from Jupiter, giving wisdom. We can do difficult things with grace. The moon rules our emotions, mental fluctuations, mothers, caregiving, devotion, nutrition. The moon is waxing as November begins, heading for a total lunar eclipse on November 7th through the 8th. Lunar eclipses when the moon is full and in the opposite sign from the sun, while at the same time both of the luminaries are next to the nodal axis, which causes the shadow that temporarily blocks the light. Eclipses come in pairs, and this is the second in the pairing that began October 25th when the sun was partially eclipsed. Ancient people considered eclipses to be dramatic events due to the loss of light to the shadows. In our modern times, when the artificial lights are everywhere, it is less likely that people even notice this temporary dip in the light. This full moon eclipse will be visible in the Americas, Europe, and Asia, occurring in the fiery sign of Aries, while the sun is opposite in Libra. The shadow falling on the bright moon is like the eyes of the world closing for a short time. Surrender to that moment of stillness and feel the truth pulling at you from the inside. It's time to let go of one thing in favor of another. You can't hold on to both. During the middle of November, the moon wanes, heading for a sensitive new moon in Scorpio on November 23rd, where we may find ourselves humbly on our knees as we figure out how to start anew, given all of the new data and external influences. Mars is in charge of power, strategy, protection, alchemy, courage, and strength. As our universal power manager, Mars's effects can come across as strength, aggression, fire, and anger, depending on how we are regulating the power Mars represents. On October 30th, Mars takes retrograde motion in Gemini, retracing his recent steps and moving back to Taurus on November 13th. When he returns to Taurus, he remains there through March 2023. This is a long transit that offers us the opportunity to focus on creative projects. For all of November and December, Mars will be amplifying the need to re-engineer, recreate, and reset. The themes of rebalancing relationships, digging into the depths of the mind, and reconsolidating power will loom large. Use the fiery energy of Mars to pull things together, even though it will be tempting and much easier to blow things apart. Think of long-term goals and the underlying plan to build quality platforms that last into the future. Mercury rules communication, currency, intelligence, analysis, local travel, markets, and rules the earth element. Mercury's influence affects our communications, transactions, and expression of intelligence. In our day-to-day life, Mercury's influence is helpful in analyzing from a practical rather than emotional perspective. During the first part of November, Mercury moves through Libra, which could be helpful in keeping yourself mentally organized while navigating the waves and troughs in which you are sailing. On November 13th, Mercury moves to Scorpio, where he joins Venus. Together, Venus and Mercury are a cheerful, enthusiastic, and creative pair that helps us to communicate and relate. The current environment of Libra has been a bit intense with the eclipse pairing and aspect of Saturn. Mercury and Venus moving into Scorpio should feel slightly different, but still intense. Use this innocent perspective to regard current situations from a different angle. Mercury is intelligent, flexible, and skillful. Leverage these qualities to problem solve from a deeper level. Jupiter rules growth, expansion, positivity, children, education, divinity, abundance. And Jupiter transits Pisces from April of 2022 through April of 2023, which is generally positive, but not for everyone and not all the time. Jupiter's ability to guide, shed light, and encourage positive growth should come back online when he resumes direct motion on November 23rd. August through October could have felt very frustrating due to a Saturn-Jupiter situation in which we had high hopes that continually resulted in disappointments. The danger of growing too big too fast or putting our faith in systems that don't have a strong foundation may have been starkly exposed over the past few months. Regain your seat and find your direction. From November 23rd, 2022 through April 21st, 2023, Jupiter should be supportive regarding the big decisions in life, especially around education, career, marriage, purpose, and spiritual direction. Have faith in the seeds you plant, but also take responsibility for the details of nurturing that vulnerable sprout of life. Venus rules relationships, business, politics, entertainment, love, beauty, and creativity. Venus reflects our human striving to connect, unite, and interact. At the moment, the two signs that Venus manages are occupied by fiery, masculine forces, which may be challenging to maintain harmony and collaboration in relationships, contracts, and business deals. 2022 has carried a theme of struggle in relationships, which likely continues into 2023. Partnerships, collaborations, business ventures, and politics all fall under Venus's umbrella as we study the negative results that come from too much compromise. May we learn to approach our connections with a healthier level of self-regard that allows us to participate more powerfully in our relationships. Venus moves into a passionate dance with Mars from November 11th through December 5th, which could feel intense, dangerous, and deep. With Mars in retrograde motion, we could see people and relationships re-emerge, offering another chance or another view. This is a good time to analyze balance sheets from a logical perspective. From this new angle, red flags should be totally obvious. Ignoring them is a choice. Saturn rules limitation, contraction, illness, suffering, karma, time, age, and moves slowly with a cold air. Direct moving Saturn will continue to pressure the signs of Capricorn, Pisces, Cancer, and Libra through the holiday season, moving into Aquarius on January 16th, 2023. Use these final 2 months of 2022 to recognize and integrate the deep lessons that came through Saturn's Capricorn transit from January of 2020 through January of 2023. Saturn symbolizes the detachment required to create a balanced life. In practical terms, this ability to say goodbye to what limits our growth can be hard-earned. This is a good time for executive decisions and actions based on practicality and wisdom. The challenge is to move forward slowly and mindfully through terrain that requires deliberation and decisive action that could be painful to some. Have compassion as you move forward. As the outermost planet that we can see with our naked eye, Saturn's department is keeping the time framework steady and ensuring that all of the karma that we are doing is accounted for. Since Saturn plays a long game, let's remember that he gave us a preview of how things may be for a couple years when he changes signs in January of 2023. This preview was April 29th through July 12th of 2022. So remember back to what was going on then, as that may point to near future situations. Rahu, the north node of the moon, rules humanity, instability, addiction, innovation, internationalism, diversity, and opportunities. Rahu transits the fiery environment of Aries from April 2022 through October of 2023, which creates a dynamic connection to that which we truly desire and boosts our courage to actually go for it. Rahu is associated with humanity in general, fame, desire, instability, and innovation. Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius signs all will be affected by this wild Rahu effect during this time frame. This volatile energy is powerful, but must be handled with care. Beware of compulsive decisions, selfish motivations, and get-rich-quick schemes. Our second eclipse pairing of 2022 comes with a partial solar eclipse on October 25th and then a total lunar eclipse on November 7th. To the 8th. With astrology being a light-guided pursuit, it is informative to also listen to what the darkness and shadows tell. The November 7th lunar eclipse is where Rahu's contrast capability will really throw some shadows, as Rahu and Moon oppose Ketu and Sun. What Rahu can show us from the October 25th partial eclipse is what we really want. Dramatic situations will bring out the true nature and desires. Discovering this truth in the midst of a moment of darkness could lead to turning that truth into an inextinguishable guiding light. Ketu, the south node, rules followers, the army, spirituality, intuition, mistakes, blindness, and obstruction. Ketu transits Libra from April of 2022 through October of 2023, inviting us to rebalance our relationships, hone our intuition, and find our spiritual friends, including activities that are designed to unite rather than divide. Tenacious Saturn continues to help Ketu obstruct strongly in the sign of Libra through mid-January 2023. Use the hard edges and roadblocks to intuitively guide your decisions, remembering lessons learned from the past. In order to ascend past the material obstacles that Ketu can manifest, we are charged with finding the spiritual thread that eventually lifts us beyond the suffering of the world. The wisdom Ketu offers when we regard our limitations as spiritual invitations helps us to fully experience the fruits of life with detachment that protects us from becoming mired in that which we cannot control. When the sun moves out of Libra on November 16th, Ketu will once again be alone in Libra, without the drama of eclipses and conjunctions. This could be a signal to carve out ample time alone to process as we head into the new calendar year. For an in-depth analysis of specific planetary placements, please continue to listen to the full planetary forecast. The full moon total eclipse in Aries on November 7th and 8th. The first milestone of November will be the second eclipse in a pairing that began with a partial solar eclipse on October 25th, with Sun, Moon, Venus, and Ketu joining in Libra. The theme of solving problems caused by an imbalance between individual needs and the needs of other parties was sharply outlined by that grouping and eclipse event. The need to mentally and possibly physically retreat from a certain situation could have been plainly revealed during that time. As the moon begins to wax after this new moon solar eclipse, it runs through a series of challenging situations, coming to oppose the grouping in Libra and joining with Rahu in Aries for a total eclipse of the moon visible in the Americas, Australia, and Asia. This full moon eclipse happens on November 7th and 8th, depending on where in the world you are. The moment of the full eclipse comes when the moon and sun exactly oppose, which allows the Earth's shadow to block the light of the sun from hitting the moon. The moon will be at 22 degrees Aries in Bharani Nakshatra, also in a Pushkara Navamsha, which is positive and auspicious. The sun will be sitting at 22 degrees Libra, past his point of debilitation and in Vishak Nakshatra. This point in time could mark the culmination of a series of painful and destabilizing events that lead toward eventual clarity about how to move forward with courage on a path that is dictated by your own desires. With the sun getting eclipsed by Ketu on October 25th, we may have faced the difficulty of detaching our ego from a situation in order to surrender to practical reality and irrefutable evidence. With the moon getting eclipsed by Rahu during the November 7th and 8th eclipse, we may be faced with managing the emotional fallout that comes after a decision is made, a problem is confronted, or an ego is recovering from injury. People with significant placements in personal horoscopes that fall under the degrees where eclipses happen may be more affected in the domains of life indicated in the chart. 22 degrees Aries could be a sensitive point in this regard, especially through the next eclipse pairing, which comes in April and May of 2023. The sensitive point created by the previous eclipse on October 25th is 8 degrees Libra. Venus transits Scorpio, November 11th through December 5th. As the eclipse energy clears, we see a series of planets shift signs in mid-November. Venus moves from her own air sign of Libra to Mars's water sign, Scorpio, on Friday, November 11th. With Mars returning to Taurus on November 13th, this puts Venus and Mars into an opposition and also a parivartan, an exchange of signs. This creates a strong bond, sambandha, between both planets, giving them both an improvement in status and strength as if they are both seated in their own signs. With Venus having just participated in the eclipse pairing and, in a sense, conducting the whole act by occupying her own sign of Libra while these events happened, she may be carrying with her some heavy lessons, newly integrated. The sign of Scorpio is the natural 8th sign of the zodiac, co-ruled by Mars and Ketu, the south node of the moon. This combined rulership with Mars and one of the nodes gives Scorpio its enigmatic, powerful, and transformational reputation. Even the fact that both of the rulers are fiery in nature, but the sign itself falls to the water element, brings attention to the paradoxical situations that Scorpio can offer. Between the water sign of Scorpio and the fire sign of Sagittarius, which is adjacent, lies the second Gandanta point of the zodiac. At each of the three junctures between the water and fire signs lies this sensitive point, the Gandanta. These points are considered difficult if a planet occupies them in a natal chart, but let's consider the difficulty. Most of the difficulty of life lies in balancing our individual agendas, represented by the fire element, with collective well-being, represented by the water element. These points offer an opportunity to leap from one level of understanding to another, allowing us to integrate life lessons that lead us toward a more empowered life. The difficulty lies in that there nearly always has to be a sacrifice or deep surrender in order to make this leap. As we regard this deep philosophical concept, let's recall the dance of Mars and Venus at the beginning of 2022 calendar year. Mars makes a pretty good representative of the fire element, and Venus does a fine job at representing the water element. These two planets also stand up as symbolizing male and female. When Mars returns to Taurus on November 13th, he will be in a position to aspect Venus as she transits through Scorpio, the Gandanta point on December 5th, and then through Venus in Sagittarius, taking us to the year's end. Venus began 2022 in retrograde phase in the sign of Sagittarius, while Mars occupied his own sign of Scorpio with his co-lord Ketu. By the end of January, Venus had regained direct motion and was joined by Mars in Sagittarius. Through February and March of 2022, Mars and Venus traveled in tandem through the signs of Sagittarius and Capricorn. By April, faster-moving Venus pulled ahead, putting space between these two agents of the Gandanta. When assessing 2022 in this light, we may look back and see that the first quarter of 2022 could have been intensely passionate in some way due to this Mars-Venus conjunction. As the year rolled on, Venus continued to make space away from Mars, and now, as the year is coming to a close and in the final quarter, Mars will be opposing and aspecting Venus, which could have us all seeing our contracts and relationships in a completely different light. As Venus moves through the Gandanta during the first week of December, we may find ourselves faced with overcoming obstacles that stand in the way of keeping our connections afloat. Mercury transits Scorpio from November 13th through December 3rd. Ever the cheerful companion to Venus, Mercury follows her into Scorpio on November 13th, which will put this pairing rather close through the month of November. This could signal a need for some quiet time to reflect and analyze on the cost-to-benefit ratio that our current activities are outputting. With Mars entering Taurus the same day and putting the intense sambandha into place between Venus and Mars through December 5th, Mercury's presence by Venus's side through the murky waters of Scorpio could be quite helpful. Remember, the eclipse pairing and current station of the nodal axis also brings us into the dramatic attraction between Mars and Venus. As Rahu currently occupies Mars's fire sign of Aries, and Ketu currently occupies Venus's air sign of Libra. These Venus-Mars interactions turn out to bookend 2022, with the Mars and Venus conjunction in the first quarter and a Mars-Venus opposition in the last quarter. Now is the time to gain perspective on relationships, account for serious expenditures on assets, and reorganize strategic life planning. The perspective comes from analytical Mercury. He was closely with Venus and Mars in March of 2022, and now will be tightly placed with Venus as things have come full circle. Mercury doesn't make emotional decisions, which does come in handy when things get dramatic. Do the math, run the numbers, and use the unemotional terrain of Scorpio to make difficult decisions that are designed to support future growth without costing you the essential roots. Mars returns to Taurus November 13th through March 13th. As discussed in the last two sections, when retrograde Mars returns to Venus's Earth sign, Taurus, on November 13th, This puts Venus and Mars into a deep sambandha, a connection, where they exchange signs, give mutual aspects, and are in the full aspect of opposition, while Venus in Scorpio through December 5th. There will still be some connective energy even after Venus moves to Sagittarius, as Mars from Taurus will throw his gaze there as well. By the end of December, Venus will move out of Mars's range of vision, which could signal the end of a cycle begun during the first quarter of 2022. Either we move apart and move on, or we take our connections and projects to the next level as we sail into 2023. The other thing to consider is that we are now going to experience Mars in Taurus for the next 4 months due to this retrograde phase. This is a long stretch, and with Mars being chief strategist amongst the planets, we should have a good plan, or at least outline, about how we are to leverage this particular station. Mars will most strongly affect Taurus by transiting there, but also aspects Leo, Scorpio, and Sagittarius during the next 4 months. The retrograde status of Mars remains in place until January 13th, 2023, when he regains direct motion at 14 degrees Taurus in the nakshatra Rohini. From there, Mars advances through the latter half of Taurus, entering again into Gemini on March 12th, 2023. The name of the game for Mars is defense and protection, consolidation and channeling of power, and the alchemy that transforms power into even more power. Sitting in Venus's sign for such a stretch is somewhat of a challenge, as he is further taxed with being socially acceptable while sculpting his powerful products. November and December see this retrograde Mars powerfully plowing through the earthy territory of Venus. Rather than spending energy on regret or frustration about how things aren't progressing as you planned, surrender to the changes, find pleasure in the opportunity at a redo, and put your best logic to the problems you face, while also finding a way to marry the magic powers of courage and unconditional love. The Sun transits Scorpio from November 16th through December 16th. When the Sun moves out of Venus's Libra and into Mars's Scorpio on November 16th, he puts his stamp on the advice to dig deep to the roots, carefully cleaning the debris away without damaging the delicate connections to the source of what feeds you. This brings back the concept of combustion, which is when the sun's great brilliance engulfs the smaller light of another planet. This happens frequently with the planets that lie within Earth's orbit, Mercury and Venus. For much of October and November, both of these friendly helpers will be in that state, making it difficult for us to discern their qualities from that of the sun. With both Mercury and Venus traveling ahead of the Sun in the zodiac path, moving slightly faster, this sense of combustion will wane and dissipate toward the end of November. What this means is that we may collectively feel the ability to analyze, negotiate, and have our voices heard more readily than has been possible in the last couple months. This also puts Sun into the equation with powerful Mars, opposite Scorpio, in the sign of Taurus. These two planets have a friendly relationship, and the Sun's opposition may empower Mars to make individual assertions in the midst of negotiating collective peace. This may or may not be helpful, depending on the situation. The Sun suffered debility while in Libra, and can act more strongly in Mars's sign of Scorpio. Second, the nodal axis always threatens the luminaries, so being forward out of that axis should provide clarity, as Rahu's aspect will also disappear from the Sun's view. Third, Saturn is currently pressing hard and strong on Libra, further compounding the Sun's attempt to shine there. Sun moving out of Libra could bring a sense of liberation on a few fronts, and the overwhelm that comes with spacious freedom will be the next issue to address. There's a new moon in Scorpio on November 23rd. After the total lunar eclipse on November 7th and 8th, the moon wanes through the quiet signs that mark the first half of the natural zodiac. This carries us through several shifts mentioned above, so that when the moon reaches the eclipse axis once again, the scene has become relatively calm. On November 23rd, the moon settles into the arms of the sun for the monthly act of the new moon at 8 degrees Scorpio in the second pada of Anuradha Nakshatra. We see a dark and debilitated moon here, aspected by Mars and by Jupiter, accompanied by Mercury and Venus. This shows a vulnerable moon with very good support. Reach out when you're feeling low, as the helping hands should be close by. The several days leading up to this November 23rd new moon could feel draining and marks the time just prior to the popular U.S. holiday of Thanksgiving. May be good to plan now for not overdoing or overblowing the expectations to create a lavish spread. Remember, the theme is gratitude for what is. Try to sink into that humble, grounded state and rest through this dark half of the moon. One positive light is that the sun and moon will both occupy a Pushkara Navamsha, Nakshatra Pada, pushing them to Navamsha Virgo position. This is a signal to allow the emotions to break down and make way, while keeping the intellect sharp in order to track what will nourish those roots and what will detract from plans for future growth. Jupiter becomes direct in Pisces on November 23rd. Within a few minutes of that new moon, great Guru Brihaspati, Jupiter, will regain his direct motion at 5 degrees Pisces on November 23rd. This could mark a notable turnabout for many. The combined retrograde status of both Jupiter and Saturn, while they occupied their own signs, with Saturn affecting Jupiter but not vice versa, made things rather unpredictable, stunted, and difficult from late July, when Jupiter assumed retrograde motion. As Jupiter begins to move forward in his own water sign of Pisces, the final sign of the zodiac, where we gain universal perspective that allows us to first dissolve and then prepare for reformatting, we may at last begin to see our way forward after a difficult few months. What has changed from the August to October time is that both Saturn and Jupiter will be in direct motion, still placed strongly in their own signs, with Saturn aspecting Jupiter but not vice versa. This setup continues until January 12th, 2023, when Saturn moves to Aquarius, providing a solid framework for growth. Jupiter tends to quickly expand into rapid growth, and Saturn diligently creates boundaries so that the work doesn't grow too big too fast, which could threaten long-term integrity. Pay attention to both time and space, as well as the trajectories of both, as you slip into the future. From mid-January until April 21st, 2023, when Jupiter runs aground into Aries, joining an active grouping of planets including Rahu, Mercury, Sun, and Moon, and once again slipping under Saturn's gaze from Aquarius, we will enjoy this positive and auspicious energy of Jupiter in Aquarius. Mid-January 2023 continues to stand as a mark in time when we may feel some major shifts that allow us to make progress after a period of stagnation. The written version of this forecast is available at my website, planetaryinfluence.com.